Hi, my name is Ali Wilson, and I'm going to answer some questions on faith. So, the thing that I want more of in my life is quite simply more authentic connection with other human beings. And when I say connection, I mean a two-way street. So basically that feeling of, I guess you could say, unconditional love, both from me to them and them to me. I've experienced it, I know what it feels like, and it makes everything else pale in comparison. So I would want more of that, and it seems to be very, very hard to find that authentically, for whatever reason. Okay, so if it turns out that God exists, the one thing that I would want to ask him is, because he is so powerful in theory, from the people that believe in him, they state this, why does he make the cause and effect of suffering so disjointed? So, why is it that there are people that, have so much pain and suffering, for no good reason? There are people that do good things, they are completely innocent, like young children, they're put through a huge amount of pain and suffering, and the people around them are put through so much pain and suffering. And there's no cause and effect, That's what I would want to know from someone who in theory is so benevolent and loving and powerful. Because if those same values were put on a human, we wouldn't call them those things, would we? Okay, so what I have faith in is a really interesting question, because I have faith in process, okay? So I have faith in cause and effect. So, for example, I have a huge amount of faith in that when something happens, something else will happen as a result. And that includes when nothing happens. So if you do nothing, something will occur. If you do something, something will occur. I have the utmost faith in that. The fun bit is figuring out what, right? But that's what my faith is, okay? Cause and effect. So the biggest step of faith that I've ever taken was probably opening up my own business, like over 10 years ago, because that was a case of faith in myself, and it's stressful and terrifying and all of those sorts of other things. Probably that, to be honest. That's it. Yeah. Okay, so this is an interesting one. What would it take for me to put my faith in a God I can't see? So, see, from my point of view, you can't see a lot of the laws that govern our lives, okay? So some people would, say that that's the law of God, or the law of the divine, right? But for me, we can't actually see the laws of the universe, whatever that is, that govern our lives, right? And yet I still put faith in those, I still put faith in a process I can't see. I mean, I can write it down, but to me, that's the same thing. So I guess understanding that something happens and that everything happens, most of it happens outside of our view, right? We only see this much. We only have a tiny perspective from which we can view anything, right? And our perspective is very narrow, very focused, and unique to each of us. So I guess we all have to have faith in that process, because we can't see anything outside of a tiny perspective of our own. right? So whether that's God, whether that's science, whether that's anything, like we all have to have faith in the thing that we can't see, because our viewpoint is incredibly limited, right? What do I think is the Holy Spirit? Do you know what? Like, this is one of those questions where I'm just like, my gut instinct is that it's a feeling, right? So it's not a who, and it's not really a what. It's not like a massively tangible what. I think it's a feeling. And some people would maybe call it a soul. Some people would maybe call it intuition with your emotions. And that's probably more where I am. Like, you know, being in touch with your emotions probably is that thing that, like, you get that feeling of being in touch and in connection with things because you're more in harmony with your reactions to things that are happening. And so that can feel like you can be guided, like by maybe something that feels external but is internal, but is actually a communication externally and internally. Or maybe that just sounds like a right load of rubbish, but it kind of makes sense to me. Okay, so what do I think of the gifts that have been given to me, and what would I ask God for? You see, this is a question that honestly you could probably like debate for hours, right? Because a part of it is privilege, right? You know, like we are all born to the roll of a dice, okay? And some of us are born with far more privilege than others. And so, you know, we can talk about gifts of like, you know, genetics, you know, or we can talk about the gifts of birthright. We can talk about the gifts of location. We can talk about the gifts of like, you know, our family and heirlooms and so on and so forth. You know, so like me personally, my viewpoint is that privilege like should be used to like give strength to those people that don't have it. So that if you have strength for yourself, you use that strength to give opportunity to those who don't. That's it really. But the question of asking God for gifts, well, the thing is in theory, God is all powerful, right? So if I had the opportunity to ask him for gifts, straight up, I'm going to ask him for superpowers. I mean, I think being able to fly would be really cool, or maybe to turn invisible, or to like be able to read minds, you know, because if you could read minds, you could help so many people. So yeah, I would ask for a superpower straight up, or maybe I'd just ask to be Spider-Man. Yeah, because I look really good in the Spider-Man outfit. Okay, so what do I think is the deepest human need? And I'll be honest, it's kind of almost a trick question, right? Because I think that the deepest human need is also the most shallow one. And when I say shallow, I don't mean that in like a bad way. I mean like the one that we're introduced to. And that's just simply love and affection from other human beings. We're born into love as babies because rather uniquely as creatures, without that love and affection and care from our parents, we die. And without that continued love and affection, it's the thing that affects our life the most. So other human beings have the most power upon our lives. And so our deepest human need is very much love, connection, affection, you know, like authentic relationships with other human beings. And it's the thing that we're kind of like born into, and it's the thing that's all around us, and it's the thing that we need the most. I think it's really straightforward. Okay, so what would make the world a better place to live in? And really simply, like an easy one would be like an end to capitalism, but probably from a more philosophical point of view, an end to hierarchy, right? As in hierarchies that are held onto, you know? So capitalism is a form of hierarchy, so is most of the other things, you know, that are implemented through modern society. And these hierarchies are then set up as structures that, you know, need to stay in place. And as a result of that, you get all of the abuse of power, but you also get the huge disconnection, which goes back to the deepest need that people need, which is connection. And hierarchies remove that connection. So to make the world a better place to live in, it's that we learn how to live without hierarchy. Okay, so what could the church do to make the world a better place? So this also goes to my hierarchy thing. I think that the church, not every church and not every person within the church, but there is a big thing about the church seemingly want to sit on money and power and status, right? And I think that is part of the problem with humanity. And again, it's the problem of hierarchy. And the church sits firmly within that. And they, enjoy authority, they enjoy power, they enjoy status, and they enjoy wealth. And I think all of those things are against the tenets of the very religion that they claim to uphold. So it makes no sense to me. And the church could lead by better example, I think, for what humanity actually needs in terms of the connection that we all crave. Okay, who do I think Jesus is? Now, you know what, there's so many ways to answer this question. You could think, well, Jesus wasn't really who he's portrayed to be and blah, 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 right? Some people say he's the Son of God. Some people say he was this dude, right? And if Jesus really did exist, and however people interpret him, he sounds like he was a pretty calm and chill dude, which I can respect. But I think what Jesus represents is he is a figurehead for an emotional place, right? An emotional place of being calm, an emotional place of being forgiving and giving and loving, right? And so he's a figurehead for an emotional status, right? Which I can actually, kind of get behind. Because when I think about it, whenever people do bad things in the name of religion, they always say in the name of God. I don't ever hear anyone talking about torturing or killing people in the name of Jesus. Jesus seemed to be a pretty chill and calm dude. And, I think that we have these emotional figureheads in modern times. For example, for me currently, probably what you would call my Jesus would be Post Malone. He's my emotional figurehead, all praise Posty. That's what he means to me. Okay, so a really interesting question is, what leads me to pray or prayer? And, what would I pray to? And do you know what? When bad things happen and when panic kicks in and worry kicks in, it's not a thought of prayer at all. It's a thought of action. It's always a case of what can be done? What can I do? And if I don't know what to do, how can I find out what to do? So, I search for those kind of answers. And yeah, I guess the attitude for me of prayer is asking someone else to take care of it, which, I don't like, I want, to take action. Okay, how do I feel when others try to tell me about their religious beliefs? To be perfectly honest, I'm fascinated. It's absolutely fascinating. Because I want to know, what they believe in, People's beliefs run so deep through their entire being that, when they open up and tell you about this stuff, they're telling you very fundamental but also vulnerable truths about what they feel about the world and themselves. And so it's always a privilege to listen to people's religious beliefs and gain an understanding of their perspective on the world. So it's fascinating and very connecting. Even if I don't share their beliefs, it doesn't matter. All you have to believe is that they believe. You don't necessarily have to believe their belief, if that makes sense.